Hey everyone, welcome back to New Slang. I'm music journalist Thomas Mooney. I hope all of my friends and family and buddies down here in Texas are doing well this week. We've all experienced a lot of bad weather and compounded that with some horrible infrastructure problems, and I know a lot of people who have lost electricity and been without water for at least a couple of days here and there, and hopefully y'all have been able to stay safe and sound and hopefully not had too many problems with busted pipes or anything remotely that close. So yeah, here's to hoping everything gets back to normal as soon as possible. All right, so this episode right here is with Fort Worth-based singer-songwriter Simon Flory. Simon has a great new record coming out this Friday, February 26th. It's called Haul These Blues Away. He already has a couple of singles out, one called Peter Mac Built a Semi-Truck and the other The More You Talk, The Less I Hear. I encourage you to go check those out. Specifically, go check out the music videos. We talk a little bit about them during this, but yeah, go check those out. And obviously, they're a great preview for what this album is. I mentioned it later on in the interview, but I'll say it again here. What I really dig about this album is how it really harkens back to a time when songs and stories, they were shared within the home as a form of entertainment. Now, there's obviously nothing wrong when you and your family, you join around the television for a Netflix show or something like that. That's really, really great. But I think there's something incredibly cool when the family unit would surround the radio to like catch a Opry show or something, and that kind of became a tradition for families. Or someone would have a guitar or a fiddle or a banjo, and when they would tell stories and play old songs and create new ones. A lot of Simon's storytelling, he evokes a lot of that early country and bluegrass sound. There's that genuine, earnest storytelling that fits right in as well. And of course, I absolutely love that first single, Peter Mac Built a Semi-Truck, since it does lean into that old trucker country period as well. Anyway, I really enjoyed talking with Simon about songwriting and storytelling and traveling the country and kind of being stuck in Fort Worth this past year because of the obvious. And yeah, I think y'all will enjoy this one. Today's presenting partner is our pals over at Desert Door Texas Soto. If you're asking yourself what exactly Desert Door or a Soto is, well, it's a premium, high-quality spirit that is similar to a tequila or a mezcal, but in my estimation, it's more refined, smooth, and fragrant. It has a distinct and intriguing palate that picks up on hints of vanilla and citrus while maintaining a healthy earthiness that is quite enjoyable. One of my favorite features about Desert Door is just how versatile it really is. If you want to feel fancy and a little highbrow, it's perfect for a variety of cocktails that call for lime wedges and coarse salt, chopped ginger, agave nectar, sprigs of thyme and sticks of cinnamon. If you're down to muddle some fresh fruit, all that kind of stuff, it's perfect. It's great for experimentation and fine-tuning all of your mixologist skills. And then also, if you're a little bit more down home and casual, you got that denim jacket on. It's just perfect for those short and sweet, simple go-to favorites that hit the mark every time. I'm talking about ranch waters and Moscow mules and palomas and Mexican Coca-Cola with Desert Door. What I love so much about Desert Door is just how genuine and authentically West Texan they are as well. They go out and harvest Soto plants out in the wild and are aware and knowledgeable conservationists at heart. So next time you're at your neighborhood liquor store, get yourself a bottle of Desert Door. I'll throw a link into the show notes for more information. All right, so if this is your first time listening to New Slang, go ahead and do us a favor and hit that subscribe button. Do us another favor that will take like 5 seconds. Go give the show a 5-star review over on iTunes. Be sure to check out the merch store, our Patreon, all that kind of stuff. Links will be in the show notes. Let's go ahead and get on into the interview. Here is Simon Flory. Start off with what we were talking about just a second ago, and obviously here in Texas, it's the entire state is like at 2 degrees and a blanket of snow. You just mentioned how you guys lost power there early this morning.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, well, you're from a little bit further north, so are you a little bit more used to this? And And how do you think that? Obviously, you've been down here in Texas for a while, but does it always surprise you that like no one here in Texas knows how to drive?
No, the reason I'll say it doesn't surprise me because the roads are untreated. And I've definitely been here. This is the longest I've lived anywhere as an adult. And, like when it rains and it's really slick, yeah, that was kind of head scratching when I moved down here. But the last place I lived was Arkansas. And before that, I was up in Chicago for a few years. So definitely saw some cold weather up there. But all those colder places, they treat the roads and stuff. Or when it rains down here, all that oil on the highway always, kind of sloshes around and everybody's like riding on to, a slicked up, greased up cast iron skillet, it's pretty wild. So, I wouldn't say it doesn't surprise me. And of course, it's today I'm not driving any of this crazy stuff. It's, the first accumulation of snow I've had since moving here, 10 years ago in 2011. So the first real snow I've been able to make a snowball with. So pretty wild. It's cold. And I did see that we did hit double digits here in Fort Worth this afternoon. It is 10. We're doing good.
Yeah, you're going to make me jealous over here.
Wait, but you have power, correct?
Yeah. I can't complain that much, yeah.
We've been off the power for maybe, who knows how long, since the middle of the night. And we're at 52 degrees in the house and holding. So we're holding at 52. So it's not so bad. You can see your breath, but we're making it.
Yeah. One of my friends, he made a pretty funny dad joke earlier today. He said, it's not the cold, it's the humidity.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah, you bring up a good point though. You bring up a good point about how the roads aren't treated. We don't really have the infrastructure. We've not invested in any kind of, or I say like any kind. There's still, I guess there's some stuff out there, but as far as snow plows and stuff like that, but it's not nearly as much as some of our northern friends. So I kind of do give a little bit of that free pass to a lot of folks down here, but I also say, at the same time, I don't know if Texans know how to drive in general. So,
from driving around playing music everywhere, certainly every region has their distinct, driving idiosyncrasies. I should call them idiocracies, actually. It's like you cross the state line and all of a sudden you're dodging the huge potholes in Louisiana and everybody's dodging them. And, the New Jersey Turnpike is probably, or maybe West Virginia Turnpike are the two, scariest roads I've ever driven on. That's some Mad Max shit. Until you take I-35 and just, I was on a tour, I guess I call everything last year, but now it's 2 years ago, I guess 2019 in the fall of it. And I was on a little songwriter tour. We were running around Texas, some friends from out of state, Zach Schmidt from Nashville and Roger Harvey from Philadelphia. And they just couldn't believe the amount of burning vehicles in Texas. Everywhere we went, there'd just be cars burning on the side of the road. And I'm like, welcome to the Thunderdome.
Yeah.
It's pretty wild.
One of my little things that I always kind of go, about is over here in Lubbock, you'll see a lot of people complain about the drivers. And, oh man, the driving in Lubbock is so horrible, yada, yada, yada. And then you talking to them, you're like, oh, where are you from? Oh, I'm going to school at Tech right now. And I'm from, and they'll name some DFW area, town and suburb or something like that. And you're like, what I've realized, long story short, is it's not like the Lubbock driver who's like the bad driver. It's like any college kid who's coming to town who's like, there's that common thread right there is always like, yeah, you guys are like the ones who are bringing the action because I don't know, it's trust me, during the summers when no one's here, when there's no kids in session, it's a little bit more relaxed, and it feels like you can actually drive around town. Which, of course, that sounds like I'm complaining about Lubbock driving. Even when
Yeah,
there is school
right.
in session, you can still get across town like in 5
And,
seconds. So it's
and it's Lubbock. It's Lubbock, which is actually built on a grid. I mean, I can find my way around Lubbock, and I've been known to get lost in a hayfield. So it's like I feel like people can find their way around now around here, driving around these interstates. I moved up to Fort Worth 3 years ago from Austin. And Austin, it's got it's got its main arteries. And you learn all the back ways and the ways to get around traffic. And luckily I was a landscaper around there too while I was playing music. And so I learned a lot of the, just surface streets. And then you get up here to this beast over here around Fort Worth. You got all these huge interstates, and yeah, I drive myself crazy. So I'm still a surface street driver. I like taking my back ways, my neighborhood roads, but not today, man. Today it is covered. We got about 3 to 5 inches, and it's cold. It's real deal. But
yeah,
I mean, blizzard, pandemic,
end of the world. Yeah,
bring it on. Yeah. I immediately got a call today from a buddy in Arkansas who was, we had to reminisce real quick because we were both thinking about the giant ice storm in 2009 that we lived through. And that was 13 days without power. So I think I can do this. It's we already went outside and, ran around in the snow a little bit. So I wouldn't talk about enjoying it, but definitely survivable.
Yeah.
What a time to put out some music too,
Yeah, I mean, that's the weirdest part of all this, obviously, is seeing all these artists trying to transition into how they support the music and how they're doing. Like how do you put a record out after like a year of there being quote unquote really no shows, and obviously so many artists, the promotion of a record, the selling of a record is just tied to touring and playing places, especially here in Texas, and trying to find those new ways to talk about a record and still like push the record. And it's been an interesting turn of, I guess, like a turn of events for the artist.
Yeah, I've certainly thought about it a bunch because I've been doing it, but I've also thought a lot about, I mean, quite honestly, I'd be lying if I said it was a terrible thing and that it's awful that we can't tour, only because the one good thing we're getting out of it is some actual reflection about what it meant to tour and what it meant to play some of these shows and to be doing the things the way that we were doing, just in general in the music business and the way that it was working. Now, how it's going to move, what's going to happen moving forward, I don't know, but it is slowing us down and making people think and making people, sitting with projects longer, working on them, doing things that maybe we should have been paying attention to earlier, when it was just all about playing live shows. And that's, no matter what, the memories last forever and all that stuff. But I got to tell you, some of those really great shows, they're not like holding a record in your hand, afterwards, a year later, 2 years, 10 years later, they're not going to last forever. And it's really been interesting to have those, kind of reflect on that and how the online stuff has been working and how interesting that was to really be a big thing immediately following the quarantine lockdown, and how much that's changed, and people doing less of it and people sneaking in live shows, but not publicizing them. You've seen that a bunch because they want to be sensitive about what they put out. It's been a lot to process and take in for an entire year of this. I'm still floored by it. But I will say, for how kind of road weary everyone was getting, um, it seemed like a short break at the beginning, but now it's just a whole nother world,
This episode of New Slang is brought to you by Hot Damn Coffee. Rolling in from the hills of eastern Tennessee is Hot Damn Coffee. It's a down-home company that roasts single-origin, high-quality coffees from around the world. Their year-round roasts come from certified farms in Ethiopia, Tanzania, and Nicaragua. Check out the Hot Damn website over at hotdamn.coffee. There you can find more info on their operation and roasting process and some helpful tips on how to brew the best cup of coffee. They've certainly made my mornings that much better. And to be perfectly honest, I enjoy a nice cup of coffee at all hours of the day. Some of my favorites have been the Tanzanian peaberry in medium roast and the medium roast of Nicaraguan with the honey process. While there, check out their Hot Damn Coffee Club, which is a monthly subscription service. With the holiday season coming upon us, it's just really kind of the perfect gift. I don't care how difficult or easy a person is to shop for, they'll always be good with items like high quality coffee. And of course, right now, if you throw in the promo code SLANG in all caps, that's SLANG, you'll get 20% off your order. And if you're signing up for the Coffee Club subscription service, they'll take 20% off that first month and also throw in a bonus 8-ounce bag of their Nicaraguan coffee. Again, that's SLANG in all caps. Head over to hotdamn.coffee and sign up today. All right, let's get back to the episode. Yeah, I don't know, like this time last year, it was kind of like the Wild West when it came to these streams, and it felt like sensory overload. And it was like, and I guess people were trying to figure out what, is the live stream okay for me? Because obviously, like, so many people stopped doing it because it's like, well, I don't know, like maybe I just don't fit that avenue as well as other artists. And some obviously have really found that as like a great way to connect with fans.
Yep. Yeah, I thought maybe it would continue to I feel like a lot of people have gone on and made those connections with fans like you're talking about, but I thought maybe it would become more accessible for artists and maybe bigger productions. But I haven't really seen a lot of that. Now, I will say I've been off Facebook for almost this entire thing. So that's a big difference. I took that, like I'll just post it through Instagram or something, but that needed to happen around the election. So I've been trying to stay, up to date on actual facts. So in other words, staying off of Facebook. So maybe I lost some things there, but me personally, I have not been doing much. I did a ton of live streaming at the beginning. And of course, things like Concert Window. I used to, being from the acoustic music world, I'm used to these live stream shows that you could do anywhere. And we would do them quite a bit, including playing shows for fans overseas on this program that I think it's defunct now, but it was called Concert Window. And it was this revolutionary thing where you could tip on it. And this is, in the old days, back in 2017. So, and people, we would have it at noon or 1 or 2 or whatever, so that people overseas could watch the show. And that was a pretty neat thing. So it didn't seem like all that weird of a deal. Of course, I'm not in like a hardcore band or something. So it's like playing acoustically to a telephone is not, it works. That's how I demo everything. That's how we share tracks. That's how, we send videos to each other and upload stuff. So
yeah,
it worked okay at the beginning, but it seemed to wear out its welcome after a while, I think, with people as well. So
yeah, I think that like one of the, I guess I have a couple of points on here. And one is that like a television show or like the radio, if it's at home, it just is so easy to fall into the background. And, obviously at a live show, there's plenty of people who just go to a show at a bar just to be there for drinking. But there's that way of you being able to always have some of those people there that just came for you. And then there's that ability to maybe turn the crowd to at least listening for a moment at least, right?
Totally.
And what I find also really so interesting about the live show on the stream is there's like only so much that like you can, I guess, do as production wise, because obviously you can. I realized that I saw a lot of people, getting mics and setting up and like lights and everything like that, to do like a real show. And then like on the other end, there's still like the people who are like, hey, I just have an acoustic guitar. I'm playing on my phone, and this is what it is. And I guess like what it is too, though, is since people are usually watching on their phone, there's only a certain level of production that you can do, because I was talking to some guy about this where they had set up all that kind of stuff to do these live sessions in their house. And, one of the comments that comes through is like, man, the sound is shitty. And it's like, well, don't you think it's probably like you listening on your phone and not like what's going on in the room here? And I don't know, like it's this weird, I guess it's kind of like adding all these little things, all these like really nice, awesome production things to, something that like maybe people are only going to be able to watch on their phone, and they're like, it's in their hand and they're just like in the living room watching, or you know what I mean? You get what I'm saying?
Yeah. I do know that if it's a larger event, like if you remember, they put Luck Reunion on virtual, and there's certainly more friends having like watch parties, or everybody's like talking. That I remember that day because everybody's like, hey, are you going to watch Luck? And we shared it onto our TV, and my TV's hooked up to a receiver, and it sounded great. Now, do I do that when I listen to Coffee with Croy on Sunday mornings? Not usually. I just watch on my phone while I'm walking around the house, usually in my regular underwear, but today long underwear with then sweatpants and then a pair of jeans and my insulated Carhartts. So but really it is that way. It's like, how good is the streaming quality and all that stuff. So there's all kinds of factors, but I will say for me, once I started to play a couple of outdoor shows, which I did up until a couple of weeks, 3 or 4 weeks ago, I honestly, it's like, I was doing a bunch of them right away, but also my full-time job was to play music until whatever that was, March 11th or whatever the last show was, March 10th. And that was the job. So of course, when it went online, I followed the job, and, we were playing shows. We were doing 2 or 3 a week and doing them for whoever, both on our platforms. And then, whether it was Chicago Honky Tonk or like, I don't know, people out there that was like hosting. But then, I mean, it doesn't take long, especially being solo, duo, acts, without working, I don't have any money. So I think it was like 10 days after the last show, I was already back to landscaping after not, doing that for 5 years. So pretty wild how quickly and how fragile. And that part's been just really a big wake up call, And so then to bring it all back together with releasing music, it's like, hey, those can live separately a little bit. I can still release this art project, and not, I can't tour around it. So
yeah,
it's a lot of conversations with myself about it.
Yeah,
my dog too.
You brought up something pretty early on in this that I wanted to come back to, and that was about like the live show and like thinking about touring. And what I guess like where I was thinking about it was, have we watered down like the live performance where it just in this strange way put so much pressure on artists, where you kind of wear yourself thin. You are going out like as much as possible to play versus, and to make a living on that versus like clearly the physical product. You know what I'm saying? Do you think like fan bases are going to appreciate the live show a lot more going forward? And not necessarily like demand less shows, but let artists have a little bit more like breathing time, I guess, a little bit more appreciation for, you know, merch and like, I guess like that, like buying more of that kind of stuff without the show being a part of it. Does that make a sense?
That makes a ton of sense. Well, I have a ton of things I think about that, just in terms of that's supposed to be what you're talking about, playing special shows where people show up and listen because they enjoy your record. That's supposed to be reserved for almost like the legacy acts. You know, the people that used to that made it big and did well up until record sales tanked, you know, in early 2000s. You know, you have even people from the 90s who are kind of like legacy acts that can do that. And part of that is because our system used to work that way, that the record was important, the radio sales were, you know, radio spins were important, and therefore they had a huge fan base because you were in one or two publications and newspapers and radio, and that's it. And everybody just was on top of whatever was cool. Or same thing with, you know, the last big festival push that happened. I guess that would have still been 90s stuff. And so I think that it can go back that way, but there's going to have to be, I don't know, maybe a concerted effort to really push it that way. I don't know if there's not really like anybody that's going to do that, unless it's, well, point being, I think everything's going to be super hyper local too, to start off again. You know, it's not like, oh, the world's back open and I'm going to go take off and hit the road. I think it's still going to be a lot of more gradual, and that it's going to be like local stuff. And, you know, which is what I really enjoy about music, being involved in a music community. But yeah, I certainly think that, I mean, I often call myself art projects instead of, I mean, it's not to sound like I don't know. Does that sound like an ass? Do I sound like a pompous ass? I mean, it's not the point. The point is that it's this big old collaboration with all this shit going on. Granted, it might just be music to some people, you know, on Spotify or something, but there's a lot more going on, hopefully, between artwork and visuals and videos and people I collaborate with. And, you know, to have that then be boiled down to a stage show in the corner of a too loud room, you know, somewhere on a Thursday night, trying to make $100 is, sometimes that can be pretty frustrating. And I just couldn't see it being like I couldn't see it really being sustainable for the way that I was personally doing it. And that's, you know, playing over 100 shows a year, you know, about half on the road and then half in my area up here in North Texas. Yeah, it was getting a little wild, and hoping something would break, but I meant break for me, not against me, against the world. So.
Yeah, like it's that, you know, I'm sure you've heard this 1,000 times too, where the old days, like people went on tour to promote a record, and it feels like we've gotten to this point where people make a record to go on tour.
Oh yeah,
and I think like a little bit of us in general have kind of maybe lost sight of that, where it was like that whole thing where I don't know, like I remember Susan Gibson saying one time, I was talking to her and we were talking about how Austin, you know, quote unquote, the live capital music of the world, right? And she was saying how with that being the title, of course, it's a really great catchphrase for Austin, right? It's a great way to get people to come in. It's that kind of campaign for the city, but it also, like she said in this strange way, put the allowance for a lot of places that weren't venues to set up a mic in the corner.
Oh yeah.
And how she was like, man, there's sometimes I just want to walk into a restaurant and know that I don't have to clap every 5 minutes after a song while I'm eating,
Yeah.
a burrito.
Oh yeah. I mean, I can definitely vouch from that, having been on heavy rotation, playing, being booked at the one of the many venues at the airport. You know, that would be my weekly or bi-weekly gig. You hop out there, and then you might play the airport and go straight to Central Market and play a gig. That's before your late night White Horse gig. So that makes it less special. It waters it down. I mean, that, like you said, it can water it down, and I don't know. There's also obviously so many factors going on. I also think of like where you're at, what your cost of living is, but it is more of our music culture right now to have that. But some things like that reminds me of, speaking of Austin, I was playing a gig with Bob Hoffner, the steel player, once, and he was in New York in late '70s, early '80s, back in the real, post punk, new wave, playing with Richard Hell and the Voids and Television and all them. And he said, even though he might have been stealing power from the next room over in his burned out apartment place, they would play at CBGB's like once a month, but they would make hundreds of dollars. Like, they would get all the money, and they weren't paying squat for rent, so they could live off of it. They'd play, and you think those big scenes that we've heard so much about, you think of they were playing 10 nights a week, like they're playing just constantly. That's why they're so huge. But I think it was more about like collaborating and, of course, being out and about, but like, just being on the scene and making and creating and being multifaceted and doing all these things. And now people are getting into being this one singular entity. Like, I am a bass player. That's all I do. It's all I can do. And I have to do it 200 plus days a year to make a living at it. And the art scenes and times in history that I really appreciate and point to, with what influences me, it's all those eras where people are kind of free flowing and doing lots of things. They're doing different disciplines and not just doing one singular. I think it's healthier,
Yeah, well, I think like it makes you more well-rounded as an artist as
Yeah.
well, because you're like with anything, like there's maybe one thing that you pick up and you're just kind of naturally like, oh, okay, I can do this, and
Right.
everything else you got to work at. And sometimes
Yeah.
like being bad at something makes you better at the thing that you're good at. I've noticed that a lot of people during this time, especially early on, they've been doing other things that are not songwriting, that in my opinion down the line though is going to help with their songwriting. So
Right.
like painting or like writing and just like like more just free form and poetry and gardening and all kinds of stuff like that. I think that's all like going to help out because like you said, a lot of artists back in the day, they didn't necessarily think of themselves as just that one thing. Like my go-to example is always like Terry Allen.
Yep.
I've talking with him over the years. One of the things I asked him was like, when a song pops up to you for an idea, like, how does that go? Yeah, in a general way. And he was like, well, a lot of times I don't necessarily know if it, when an idea comes to me that I want to pursue, I don't know if it's a song. I don't know if it's a painting. I don't know if it's a sculpture, but I try and figure out, I'll start going down a route of one of those. And if it starts working, a lot of times it's everything. And sometimes we just go too far as that bass player, as you said, or like, I'm just a songwriter, or, I only do this one thing.
Yeah. No, I mean, a lot of that I think is the way that, the marketability, all that stuff is played into the individual. Um, I don't know, really, how good of a promoter are you? Wait, I'm a songwriter and I sing on stage and I play some instruments and I had this show. They're like, okay, no, but how good of a marketer are you? Can you market yourself? And it's a real honest to goodness thing that if you're not comfortable with it, if you're not good with it, um, if you want to step out of your role and it makes people scratch their head on in the people in the algorithm, then it's not going to help you. It's really, and I don't think I'm being cynical about it. I think I'm just being honest with it. That's what it feels like, and what honestly, what I've experienced. Has a lot to do with all that internet stuff. So therefore, I mean, you're talking about all this stuff and about not being able to play and getting to focus on art and doing different things. It's like really the only saving grace to counteract all of that. Are you good enough for the Spotify playlist world is to actually go out and play shows. So I will say that's been the other side of all of this. It's like, yeah, that's really the only way to do it is to shake somebody's hand. And you could spend all the promoting dollars promoting Facebook ads that you want. There's nothing more powerful than seeing somebody at the merch booth. So
Yeah. No, I definitely get that. I think that sometimes we let the industry, we let the planning get in the way of actually just doing it. Because like even just on my end, it's one of those things where it's like, oh, okay, I could have planned to do this podcast, and if I just let myself focus on that, I would have never launched the damn thing because I would have never thought I was good enough to do the damn thing in the first place. And of course, like those first episodes, they are not nearly as good as these episodes are, but it's all coming with the experience. And in translation with the artist side, it's like sometimes it's as we joke around, you pre-announce the pre-announcement, and you like pre-announce the save my song, and
yep.
sometimes it's all of those little things that kind of get it. Want to break one more time to talk about our pals over at Desert Door and offer a handful of my favorite go-tos. By no means am I an experienced mixologist or bartender or anything like that, but these have been super easy to make and great ways to unwind in the evening. Let's start off by upping your ranch water game a little bit by subbing Desert Door in. I'm a simple man. I just kind of take a Topo Chico, take a couple of drinks out, add some Desert Door, and top it off with a few lime wedges. I'm actually pretty big on the Palomas now too. What I'll do is take some Desert Door, some grapefruit juice, a dash of agave nectar, and some fresh lime juice. And I'm kind of big on lime, so I'll throw in another wedge or two when I pour it over some ice. And actually, I'll do the exact same thing, but I'll substitute some pineapple for the grapefruit for a change up. And now that the weather is dipping down, I've started having a Desert Door version of a hot toddy. Put some door and some honey together and give it a mix. Add in an Earl Grey tea bag with some boiling hot water. Let it just sit for a minute. Remember, patience is a virtue. And then, of course, I'll squeeze in a little bit of lemon just to have that balance. Anyway, Desert Door, it's as versatile as vodka and more refined, smooth, and complex than tequila. It's rich and balanced, so whatever your go-to is, it'll do the trick. For more info on Desert Door, check the show notes. All right, back to the episode. I kind of want to transition here to a lot of the people I've talked with this past year. When their records, they were clearly like recorded pre-quarantine, pre-pandemic,
Yep.
and it was figuring out how to release them during this pandemic. I've started talking, obviously, with more artists who have, like, these records have taken place post-quarantine. What side are you on? I'm assuming this is more like something that you recorded, post-March in this past calendar year. Is that true? Accurate?
No, it's
Oh,
not. It's
okay.
actually this has all been recorded um, in the previous probably 20. I mean, honestly, the majority is 2019. Almost the entire record was 2019.
All right. Yeah.
So except for really one track. It's a different record for me because it's recorded at multiple studios at multiple times, and I actually had some songs that I'm a pretty big on planning the record, and the amount of songs make sense to me, and all the characters have to live in the universe and of the record, and not necessarily a you know a full on concept record or anything, but it's just got to make sense and to what I want to put out. And this one, there is even some cut from it. But the process of doing all of that and put it all together definitely all happened during the pandemic. So it's more like I had this a bunch of songs, and then it needed to get shaved down to what it is, and to find that. But no, I was wondering what you were going to say. It's I did this almost all of it's done. Well, it is all recorded on the road, so none of it was recorded, at home in Fort Worth or around here. It was all recorded in between shows. So when I was actually on the road, so I'd take a few days off here and there and record.
Yeah, well, I kind of figured maybe that like you had during this past 9 months or whatever had kind of taken a week or a couple of weekends here and there and just hit the studio and recorded this after, just because of like the downtime aspect of it.
Right. Well, we built that into some tours, and one of them was we were playing a show in Florida and Louisiana on the way there and back, and that's where this initial idea for this record came from. And that was 2 years ago. 2 years ago this month, the release of my last full length, which was Radioville in 2019. But the reason I'm putting it out this month as well, on the 26th of February, is it's the last Friday. And so this will be the third year in a row that I'm putting something out that day. And I think I'm just going to keep it going. Every last Friday in February, I'll have a new record or, at least EP out. I don't know, for a decade or so. That's the idea, I think.
No, I like that right there, because it's again, it goes back to that whole, man, you don't have to, I think it keeps you accountable to yourself. And then B, like it's that whole thing of like, I think sometimes like deadlines are nice.
Yeah.
So.
Well, it's like a season. It's like my record release season is like, which I'm kind of, I need because I didn't have one out from 2011 to 2019. Of course, I was making a bunch of other records and different projects and things. But now that I'm, just really trying to, I don't know, be honest with myself and create some things that I want to see made. That part makes it seem like, oh man, I could do this. I can make this happen once a year. But the weird part is I haven't recorded in 2020. And usually you should be definitely a project ahead. You should have one in the can while you're promoting another one. Just because it's, but that also is when you're usually out on the road. So I think this is one of those things. It's like, man, I'm at home in Fort Worth and nobody else is on the road. The amount of incredible musicians that are in town right now. It's like, I should maybe put together a project to record some songs, because that would be just fabulous, to get a bunch of like great local people on it. So got a lot of those thoughts rolling around recently too.
Yeah, that's definitely something that needs to happen, because like just like, even on my end, just to apply that to do the journalism stuff, a lot of these artists that I've been able to talk with, it's in part because they're stuck at home. And
yeah,
you're actually the first person who has brought that up, as far as, there's all these great musicians at home too. I don't know why I've not really, it's not occurred to me, but yeah, like that makes a lot of sense. Like, yeah.
I'm like ready to start the Panther City Symphony, or, the Cowtown, the Cowtown Orchestra. It's like Ginny Mac and Jeff Daisy and Summer Dean, and it's like all my pals that we're all hanging out, you know, in some form or another anyway, you know, Gary Grammer. It's like, oh God, I want, and we're not busy. I mean, okay, so for instance, it's a good point about, you know, people being around and actually possibilities because of the pandemic would be the video for The More You Talk, The Less I Hear. It's like a crazy production that I would never be able to A, afford, or B, you know, have access to, because the crew, you know, it's a full on professional film crew that would be out making money. But because of the pandemic, we all got together and decided to make this crazy story, and more people got involved and more people got involved until we have like a full film crew with full crazy, you know, multiple 10-hour shoot days. And everybody's like, yeah, let's just do it. Like, let's do this and make something. And that would have never happened if there wasn't a pandemic. But instead, we like did a full collaboration. Everybody decided to go all in to do whatever they needed to do to finish this video. So that was cool.
Yeah, like that's the actually I was talking with the guys from Ottoman Turks last week, Joshua Ray Walker, as you know, and
Oh yeah.
Nathan Wells, and they had kind of mentioned the same thing when it came to some of their music video stuff too, because it was like we would have never been able to really do this, give even like the music video attention, because it's you know, obviously music videos, they've come into fashion and fallen out and then come back.
Oh yeah.
And it's obviously right now a great way to engage with fans and give a little bit more attention, where it's not necessarily just a live session style kind of thing. And they were talking about how so much of it had to do with just people they knew being available because they're at home. So yeah, I think that's
Yeah.
like
I
a
mean,
great way to put your friends to having put them in a little bit of work, give them so much of like what we do. I think is tied to art, like to have something that at the end of the day you're able to show like, hey, I did this. This is the work that I've done. And so it's like making these connections, reestablishing those connections, and everything that's attached to that regionalism, that localism.
yep. Yeah, no, that's a good way of putting it. I mean, the film production company here that I work with is called Make Something Beautiful, and we just have this thing going where like I had acted in their short film that they put out last year. Their editing staff worked on my short film that I put out last year. Uh, they are constantly doing big ad campaigns, so you've seen their work in all, like, you know, Texas Monthly and stuff. It's called Fort Worth Stories. So like, you know, Summer Dean's been in one of those, and I think Grady Spencer's been in one, and of course Leon and Ibrahim Alexander and all of those folks have been in one. And so just becoming friends with somebody that's an ally but in like an adjacent, you know, art discipline is pretty cool. I mean, it's been really what I've been getting more into, because honestly, all I'm doing is telling stories. That's all I've done writing, songwriting wise, but also, you know, I write in other disciplines as well, whether it be poetry or short story form, or now doing a little bit with film. You can't just do that and have somebody make it. And I always, for years and years, wondered how the heck people got stuff done, and usually wrote them off as, you know, having the trust fund while I was getting up in the morning to go dig holes. But, you know, it's not just about that. You know, you can really truly collaborate with people and create things with vision, and do that without, you know, just laboring over budgets and how much this is and that. And really the pandemic has definitely highlighted that for me, knowing that I could do something with people who want to create together as collaborators. And honestly, those 4 shoots we did in December were some of the best days of the entire year. It was incredible. We had a blast. So, and I think it comes out in the final video too, but it's really, for us, it was really just like kind of cathartic time to get out all that stuff we wanted to work through that's been going on for the last year.
Yeah, I think like again, like a lot of this is tied to, especially for people who are extroverts. It's tied to like, man, like the getting all that pent up energy out and focusing
Mm.
on a project or focusing on, some, even if it's just never going to see the light of day. I've noticed that people have, if there's something that they were able to work towards,
Yeah.
it's really helped them. I mean, this is in everyday life, but especially in the pandemic where it is so easy to just, you know, waste a week, waste 2 weeks. It was easy, especially
Yeah.
early on. It was easy to like just binge watch whatever everyone else was watching on Netflix, and then next
Yeah.
thing you know, you're like, oh shit, I've not actually done anything. What I
Mm-hmm.
wanted to go to though about this record that I like, that I love a lot of these songs like story sketches, is that to me it harkens back to a time where like there's a very familial aspect to this record and a lot of your songs where now like I never knew how to play guitar. My parents never played any instruments, and like even my grandparents really didn't. But a generation further back, it was very much that way with like my great grandfather. And I feel like a lot of people around that era definitely passed guitars around and just knew how to play instruments in a way that it was a again, it goes back to that localism, but in a even more just a family kind of roots kind of way of singing old church songs and old country songs that they heard on the radio, and even songs that, in my opinion, they sound like they've been around for a while.
Mm-hmm.
Where I like just traditional stuff, right? Where it felt like that in a lot of ways was family activities. I think a lot of these songs, these stories, kind of live in that same vein.
Yeah, that's I love to hear that, because without it being an intention, I was really just trying to record some record songs that I thought, again, like all live together in the same kind of universe. So maybe it's, you could have turned on, could have turned the dial on your local country radio station back in the day and maybe heard something similar to all of these, or definitely in the content of what's been going on, some of the stories of the song and how they're connected, and the arc of the record. And I could go on about that for days, but I would say in terms of like the songs being passed around and things like that, it's hard for me to understate how much of that I have been around and how much that influenced me, especially the time that I had living in Arkansas before I moved to Texas. And I lived in a really small community in North Arkansas in the Ozark Mountains. And, I worked at the local bass boat factory, just like everybody else did. And we, there was just so much picking everywhere all the time. Like no matter what, you could get into a picking circle anywhere. And Friday nights we would have the gospel band practice. No joke, this all sounds made up, but it's in a little community called Monkey Run down on Holler Road. So you go down Holler Road, and you take Old Military Road to Holler Road. And I would ride my mule sometimes when it was warm enough, Merle the mule, because I lived like 3 miles up the road. And you would have gospel band practice, and we would play with the Cowboy Church band. We would play in all of the like the cattle auctions, and we would have from 7 o'clock to 9 o'clock. We would have gospel church band practice, and so fiddles, banjos, guitars, bass, backup singers, everybody, and is real straight, and is mostly Hank Williams. It's most everything except for they baptized Jesse Taylor, but Mansion on the Hill and I Saw the Light and all that. And Mansion's for me, sorry, not the Springsteen song. And at 9 o'clock exactly, Bob Carson, Fiddlin' Bob Carson, who was the band leader for the Monkey Run Boys. He would 9 o'clock. He'd big old wad of beech nut in. He'd spit and look at the preacher and say, "Well, gospel music practice is over," and then he would immediately launch into "Here I Am Drunk Again." And everybody would start two-stepping, and it was just seamless. It's just what it is. It's just music, and it's a soundtrack, and everybody did it. Everybody participated. The 10-year-old would be picking along terribly, and then so would the 80-year-old person. So it was magical, and that's where the sense of melody and some of that ingrained, some of those rhythmic things, and granted, a lot of that's going to a lot of old bluegrass festivals, and honestly, just being super lucky to catch the tail end of that first generation of bluegrass guys that I got to see so many times, and I'm just really thankful for that, because heck, it's 2021, and it's, being able to catch Ralph Stanley and Larry Sparks on stage with everybody, with Bobby Osborne, and while they were still doing it, that's pretty magical. So it's trying to just, again, putting them down as honest as possible. And so I didn't want anything on the record that wouldn't sound, too different than what you'd hear when you came and saw a show. So I hope that came through too,
Yeah. And one of the things you mentioned, Ride on the Mule, obviously there's that song, If My Mule Had Wings. One of the things I love so much about that song is how creative, like, some of the what I would call just like the obviously, like, it's not like this full band kind of thing happening on that song, but there's these other little elements of that song that make it where you're like, oh, what is that? What sound is that? And I love that kind of creative aspect to that song, because there is that little bit of that, well, this is something I've not really heard much in anything.
Yeah, you might be pointing towards the masterful playing of the producer Clay Parker playing a screwdriver on a moonshine jar.
Yeah, whatever that instrument was. Yeah, that's exactly what I'm talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's pretty funny. Actually, the first couple of cuts, first couple of takes were he used the moonshine jar, and he's like, just in all sincerity, and if you know Clay, you would know that he did full on straight face sincere. He's just like, this moonshine just isn't getting the tone that I want. And then I think he went into the fridge and maybe got some pickles or something, and it sounded better. It was pretty great. But yeah, that part of that is, and part of that is being in a 3-day long recording session in his house. And Clay and Jody, Clay Parker and Jody James, if you know them, they're just venerators of just incredible, kind of like American songbook people, like folk songs on top of folk songs. Their original music is amazing, but there's just the guitar work in their harmonies. It's just like no other. It's shockingly good every single time I hear them and see them live. And I'd ask them, hey, who makes your records? And Clay makes them at his house. So that's how the conversation got going. And when we were going over to Florida to play a show, on the way back, we just stayed at their house for 3 days. And then 6 months later, we did it again. And just trying to get into the songs, and not worry about anything else. No computer screens around, straight to tape, all live takes, the initial, 2 guitars, guitar, banjo, all voices, everything. He just put some bass on afterwards. And we were kind of going for, we did look to a style, something to really think, to give us some direction. And we were thinking of the Doc and Merle Watson record called Elementary Watson. And if you know this era, I don't know how, are you a fan of bluegrass at all, Thomas?
I know a little bit, but like by no means am I like an expert. So,
well, I'm experts You know what they call them, the bluegrass Nazis. But those are the people who are often seen as traditionalists and naysayers. I actually dig this bizarre period of bluegrass that was late 70s into the 80s, which was the electric bass era. And it was really wacky because people were, you know, rocking some glittered out P basses, and the bus driver would play the snare. And it was just cool. Things got weird. You know, they put phaser on records, and it was pretty wild. And now I didn't want to go that far. It's not like that's the intention here, but just having that ticky tacky kind of sound in bass that Clay plays on the record really added a ton to it. And also kind of was a, you know, kind of a recall to some of those records like Virginia Squires and Kentucky Colonels and Tennessee Gentlemen and Doyle Lawson and Quicksilver. They all had some, you know, and obviously, you know, Osborne Brothers and some of those bigger bands, but a lot of those great records have some like real thumpy, you know, bass going on, and adding some percussion to it, of course, was fun, or sticking a board under my stomping boot. We did that a couple of times, but really keeping it like it's going to be played at the show, but, you know, have an idea still, you know, like you can do that. You can make it very thinly produced, but yet have a plan and have ideas set and have inspirations for the record. I think that still all works out and can be heard.
Yeah.
So I'm glad you heard it.
Yeah. Well, the reason I'm so timid on or hesitate on saying if I know much about bluegrass is because, yeah, there is those, it seems like there's all these little, I guess there's probably those two major camps, right? As you mentioned, like the traditionalists. And then what I find so interesting though is how bluegrass can be so progressive. And there is that other camp of like, where it really went in another direction where, there's all those rules between bluegrass and old time, and we don't have to get into any of that kind of stuff, but how, yeah, like there's some people who play bluegrass because of the, for lack of a better term, because of the actual process of playing, the how fast they can play and stuff like that. And I find that all fascinating as well.
Yeah, I call them the Olympics of musician Olympics. You know, it's like, how fast can I do this thing? And honestly, man, I tell you what, I walked into the Irving Music Complex thing over here and went to Slayer, one of Slayer's final shows. Long story about how I got tickets to that, because I'm not necessarily a fan. But the first people I see when I walked in there was half of the guys from a bluegrass band up in Denton. Like, you know, It's like the grassroots are the metal guys. But, you know, the reason that there are those two distinct camps, and they both have like this really, like, they really feel like they have some ownership in what is the fundamentals of bluegrass, has everything to do with the self-described father of bluegrass, you know, Bill Monroe, because he was at once a hardcore traditionalist and one of the biggest innovators of music ever in American history, right? He made the mandolin what it is. He made the band use the banjo the way it was. He came up with the formula of bluegrass, like the people. He originated the name, all of those things. And then at the same time, he's making records with, like, you know, he has a track with just nothing but birds, and he has a tune called Scotland that he does, and his mandolin's tuned completely differently, and it's got birds and ocean sounds, and it's bizarre, and it's like a prog tune, you know? So it's like at once both of those things are happening. So you are rightly justified to be rather confused about the bluegrass world, you know?
Yeah, well, I think all of that also ties to, I think we all think of bluegrass as this thing that's been happening since the dawn of time. And as far as like these quote unquote genres go, it is very new as well.
Yeah.
And so like, I always think like baby genres, if you will, they're finding their feet, and they're finding like what it is. And that's such an interesting, like everything's a process, of course, as far as what a sound goes, what these routes go. But I think that also plays into it because, it's not as old as people necessarily think it is.
Yeah, stuff isn't 100 years old yet, not even close. And especially when you're looking at like when things were popular, like really popular. And, how short lived like the absolute reign of the kingdom of rock and roll was, that's pretty amazing to think about 50s to 90s, like, wow. I'm not saying it died with, Limp Bizkit, but maybe, but it's like you have all these small resurgences, and right now we're still in the era of Oh Brother, and that's 2005 or earlier, it's
Right.
like, and then of course you could try, I guess, to tie that into like modern like folk pop stuff on the radio, but it really isn't like really tied to actual bluegrass bands. So it's interesting. It's for me, having played a bunch of small town bluegrass festivals around Arkansas, Missouri, Tennessee, but also getting to play some of those big ones, like Merle Fest in North Carolina. That's where the intersection happens. The bigger ones where they used to be a bluegrass festival. Pickathon, for instance, got to that a couple of years ago. That's just up in Oregon. That is the most fabulous festival I've ever been to. And it was everything but bluegrass. It was, but they changed and melded it into a way that, you still have one of my favorite bands of all time, Town Mountain, was playing there. There's the best intersection of bluegrass and honky tonk, but they also have, Garrett Capps was playing, and Tender Things were playing, and the Moon Pies were there. Basically a big Texas festival in Oregon that year. But, some of those, it's hardly strictly bluegrass places like, Old Settlers Festival. All of those are really smart in the way that they diversify their booking to like give more offerings than just this one singular thing of this one idea of what, bluegrass or festivals could be. So I appreciate that. And I also appreciate the old traditional Granny Rules festivals I've played before, where it was mandatory 1 hour hardcore warm up with the old band. And like, you have to wear a certain blue shirt from Walmart, and just bizarre, no drinking, no cussing, but everybody's got diabetes, it's like, and chain smokes. It's just wild. So I still appreciate the hell out of those days, especially watching some of the masters at work. So I don't know. I think then for me, the entire time, I love those good, rousing performances and great instrumentalists. But for me, it's always been the story songs, and that's a little less prevalent in more modern bluegrass. Of course, you have like Tom Sizemore, and especially Larry Sparks is a big one for me. His great songwriting, guitar playing, but and there's nobody like Tom T. Hall, and he was big in bluegrass world too. So hopefully telling them like I don't know, like I see them, it's less about just writing a story and about writing specific stories, I guess, is what I wanted for this record.
This episode of New Slang is brought to you by the Blue Light Live here in Lubbock, Texas. Blue Light has undoubtedly been my home away from home over the years, and has played such a vital role, not only for my development as a journalist, but obviously it's been one of the foundational pieces for a lot of your favorite songwriters and bands who have made it out of the Lubbock area over the years. And of course, as a music venue, they've played such a pivotal role for a lot of your favorite bands just in general. One of my favorite parts about Blue Light is just how versatile the place can truly be. I've seen it crowded and rowdy on a Saturday night for a rock and roll band, and I've seen it dead still on a Wednesday when a legendary singer-songwriter rolls through town. What you should do is go over to bluelightlubbock.com and check out all the new merch they've added. Hats, t-shirts, both short and long sleeve. They also have hoodies and koozies, and just added some sweatshirts that are very much an homage to the college sweatshirt that John Belushi wore in Animal House. And then of course, maybe the crown jewel of their new merch is the Varsity Club style jacket in blue satin. I got one the other day, and yeah, it's just one of my favorite things I own now. And yeah, I don't know, I just love it. Anyway, you can check out all of their new merch over at bluelightlubbock.com. As always, I'll throw a link into the show notes for easy access. Okay, let's get back to the show. Let's go into some of those stories, like as far as the development goes. How is it? I feel like a lot of songwriters clearly, they get these stories a lot of times by being out on the road. How has it been, like, as far, I want to go, I guess, in that direction first, is how has it been where maybe there's not been as much of these like little nuggets, these little like weird, I don't know, these things that spark that story, since we are in these spaces that have been, for the most part, like the same thing, versus like, you know, like being out on the road, you are able to, you see something, you're like, oh, well, I need to write a song about that, and you jot it down on your phone or on a notebook or whatever, or something like that. How has the creative process been as far as catching ideas, if you will?
I would say hugely different, you know. Yeah, every one of those little examples you just gave, I could give you, you know, several songs that I've written because of that. Or, I mean, on this record, I guess one that comes to mind would be "The More You Talk, the Less I Hear." I was on stage, and I literally said those words. Not that it's like something that's never been said before, but it was something I actually said on stage. And Brennan Lee said, "Oh, hey, you should write a song with that." That's it, you know. Like, that's the reason. That's why that title exists. That's why I went home and really worked on that tune. You know, so that does happen. I like to write on the road too. I like to write while I'm driving, totally clear head. You know, and especially picking up, like you're saying, those gems and nuggets. But the big thing for me is, like, every night you play, every time you're going somewhere, you're also playing with other bands, and you're also hearing their music and their melodies, and it's all the stories and everything combined, and it's the late nights. And yeah, there's so much there. Now, for me, I've been working kind of more steadily on bigger projects. So I mentioned making a short film last year. I just did like a companion EP plus short film that was, I showed to some like local film festivals and kind of wrote a poem under it. So it's like, kind of, they call it a poetry film. I don't know. I'm learning about all this stuff as I make it. But I've been working on a longer piece just during the lockdown, you know, during the whole quarantine, not seeing people, and to be able to sit in front of a computer and to work on a short story and a script and more of a poetry type stuff. That has been better because it requires longer chunks of time to sit, instead of, hey, I'm coming up with this one line for this song that I've been working on this whole tour, and I'm going to throw it together at the end. So there's a big difference, but I can't tell you which one, you know, is better or worse. Or
Yeah, that's interesting right there. As far as, like, you know, the bigger, I guess, what I would, to sum up what you're kind of saying, is like the more conceptual stuff that's probably been something that has been in the back of your mind for a while now, that has just been kind of eating at you, going, hey, remember me. And finally having a little bit of that time to go, okay, I can tackle you, because I have the time to do it, the patience to have to allow yourself to do it.
Yeah. So the question for me has been, like, what about the song that we always opened our third set with? You know, it wasn't good enough to be in the first two sets. It was good enough to open the third set, but what does that song do anymore? Where does it live? Like, what's its importance? Is it good enough for a record? Is it good enough for a project at all? Or was it just good enough to be the first song in the third set? There's no, like, court of public opinion, which is where we usually try out our songs. That was the safe space. So you have a safe space of, like, rolling into a gig. It's perfect. It's like Makeup and Faded Blue Jeans, Merle Haggard. You know, we were singing a new song we wrote on the way into town. How cool is that? You know, that's totally true. you can hop up on stage with a band and say, hey guys, here's the changes, and we're going to try this tune. And if people dig it, they do, or they don't. We need to turn something, switch it around, do something. But now that we're all at home, it's like, oh shit, what about this song? All I can do is sit and think about it all day. It might be the worst tune ever. I have no way. I can send it all out to my songwriting friends, but they're all like, yeah, I'm having the same problem over here. You tell me.
Yeah.
It's pretty wild.
Yeah. That's one of the things that I've always loved about, especially I feel like here in Texas, you see it a whole lot where you'll hear the band say, this is a new song, and it may not be something that they wrote that day or something like that, or
right.
even in that quick of a time, but it feels like you're able to test songs in front of audiences so much easier and so much quicker in real time versus I've noticed in Nashville, and this is like definitely a lot more of the top 40 stuff, obviously, but where they almost like save songs, and it's like they're saving it for the record and saving it for radio, and you don't ever like get those little like hints of like the new thing that's coming out. And what I've always loved so much more about what's happening and I guess like again, we're going back to these regional places. You're not it's not necessarily scared, but like you're allowed to play those songs, and oftentimes the crowd loves that kind of stuff. They love like whenever you're kind of giving them a piece of something that may happen later.
Oh, you're getting the exclusive. This is like, it's like, oh, we're in on something, and that's pretty cool. That's part of the neat experience. Now, of course, you can end up doing that to death. I've done it myself. I've definitely been in bands that we've done that too much, where we're like, hey man, let's just play all new songs tonight. Well, that's not going to get you anywhere, especially if you're not good at them. So that's where, okay, this brings us full circle. That's where putting out records and being really making honest conceptual pieces of art, put together in a record. That's where that helps really, actually, put down your actual vision, actually present it to the world. You can do it night after night, but one night you want to play all new songs. Another night you want to play all old songs. You feel like doing the melody difference on this one. At least when you're making records, that is what can be, presented to the world. While also, so I think really what we're talking about is that they need each other, the putting out records and playing live.
Yeah, I think so as well. I mean, as much as I love a record, and I do, like,
yeah.
and as much as like I've been pretty okay during all this pandemic, not seeing people, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I'm even getting to the point where I'm like, oh God, man, I need to go to a show. I you know what I mean? And I need to go to like where I'm going like, there's been times where, I've gone to like 4 shows in a week, like all in this, in succession, because that's what was so fun about seeing live music. And I'm finally like getting to that point where I'm like, I need that right now. And yeah, so it is that balance.
We played a outdoor show, done just a few this fall. And, as obviously I'm like in the moment thinking about what I'm doing. It's like, holy crap, back on stage singing. This is weird. Still don't know how to take it or think about it until after the show. I'm driving and we are all hanging out in the parking lot. And we're just stay back, we shared a joint and somebody's got a bottle, and then we're just hanging out. And we laugh, and then everybody starts crying. And then I'm driving home going, that's it. That's what I'm missing. I'm missing the parking lot hang. I'm missing the tailgate time, the whole thing. Holy crap, my buddies are strewn all over the world because of this music thing. And that's a weird position to be in, just being like, well, I would have seen friends in Nashville however many times a year I get there, 6 or 8. And those are people I regularly see, and then not seeing them for 12 months. That's just been wild. But then on the other hand, becoming, like I say, it's going to be more hyper local. I've been hanging out with, other friends here in town that I wouldn't have gotten. Very thankful. My fiance is good friends with Ace Creighton's wife, so we've become good friends. So that's been really rad. Playing some music together, and I know that you all talked a little while ago when he put out his really great record with Peeping Birds.
Yeah, Ace is a great guy to hang out with. Yeah.
Oh, we've just been having a blast. Actually, today we did have a little studio session planned today. We're going to record some stuff together, but I think it's going to be postponed. Although I did just check my phone thermometer. It is now up to 12. I will give the listeners an update. Hey, we're shooting for a high of 14 today.
Oh yeah, definitely so. The I don't know, man. I don't know if you're going to be able to make that recording in time.
No, I don't think so.
I don't know. I feel like Ace is always up for anything, though.
Yeah, I think so. I don't think I know. Well, we obviously don't have power. I don't know if they do or not. They're also on the east side of town here. Actually, I'm working up a little project. Zach Moulton was going to be in town, and we were going to do a little spoken word pedal steel thing together. So that's I'm always trying to, I don't know, just keep moving forward with little stuff like that and not be afraid to try stuff. So it'll happen. The snow will melt. And I'm at least, fairly confident that putting out music right now is a good idea. I mean, heck, people are certainly still stuck inside. Didn't think that would happen a year later.
Yeah, well, I mean, what else are you going to do? I've gone back to that. Is like, there's so much planning you can do for stuff, and I think that people need music. I mean, again, I think as I've mentioned, like with a lot of these songs, they feel like songs that that idea that's in my head of like my great grandfather and like my great aunts and uncles and all of them kind of like playing together on a Sunday afternoon. You know what I mean? Because I know they did that. I don't know how often they did that, but like that's what's in my mind. And I think like people need that. And in today's world, a lot of times that comes in the form of albums and records and shows, obviously.
Yeah, and since they aren't happening, I'm hopefully, and with this one, I'm getting starting off just putting it on the, it's going up on the internet. But it's been nice having a few more things like this. This has been great, getting to be getting the word out there a little more this time. Couple of like interviews and things like that, and some unexpected one like my first single, Peter Mac Built a Semi Truck. I got bizarrely, I'm doing an interview with a radio station for truckers.
Oh, see, I love that. Yeah.
See, the other day I was thinking, it's not that I am surprised. I think that I'm doing an interview with a trucking radio station. I think it's at this point in my career, I thought maybe I'd be doing more of them. The fact that it's my first one is the surprise. And for how much I grew up in the cab of my dad's truck, listening to like Red Sovine and all of those guys, especially Red Sovine with like the spoken word resuscitation of Teddy Bear and Phantom 309, just Little Rosa and Mama, Roses for Mama, all of those songs. I mean, just like those are just like stuck in me forever. And I think it's cool as hell that there's things like that around, that it's not just the the local AM station. I think that's kind of the wonder of the internet, that there are things like that going on.
Yeah.
For truckers only radio station.
The guy that I remember, he passed away earlier this year, and that is, of course, Bill Mack. Was like such a, as far as a radio DJ, was like the trucker DJ. And, you know, my dad, he drove some as well, hauling stuff for our trailer company. And I remember, like, I was telling someone earlier about how Bill Mack was in I guess like in Midland, or not Midland. He was in like Fort Worth, Dallas area, making an appearance. And like my dad, very, very serious kind of man, very, you know, not a whole lot as far as words go. And I'd never seen him like ever really excited to meet anyone until the day that like we drove out of the way to meet Bill Mack. And like, I swear, like it was like seeing him like as a kid. And that was like the first time I'd ever like envisioned my dad as like, oh, you know, he was a 12-year-old kid at one time. And this is like meeting Clint Eastwood for him or something.
That's good. That's pretty great. I appreciate that. Just that culture that, you know, if you're around it at all around that time, you know, all the way, you know, up through the 90s and stuff, like trucking culture was strong. And, you know, we had long haul truckers that would stop by our house and sleep on the couch. You know, you're waking up to these huge dudes, you know, like just like overflowing off of our old plaid corduroy couch, just like boots sitting next to him, dip cup and empty beer bottles. And it's like, wait, that's exactly what I do to other people's houses now as a musician. This all makes sense.
Yeah. I was earlier, as I mentioned, like with that talking with Josh and Nathan, was, you know, I think Josh said something about, you know all the good stops because of where the truckers are. And that is absolutely true. If you want to know like where all the great food is, but obviously the caveat is that they also have really great parking lots and space. Like they know that stuff.
Oh yeah. I mean, I mentioned Zach Moulton earlier from the Moon Pies. I mean, like he was a long haul trucker before joining the Moon Pies. It's just like, it makes sense. You know, I think the line from Road Crew song, he drove for Swift, I think that's probably points back to Zach, because I know he used to be a Swift driver. And it's like, you know what you're doing. And after a while, of course, you know, if you run up I-35 enough times, you know, never stop at that gas station, obviously. What time is it? Oh, don't stop on this, whatever. You know, there is a game at, you know, the fact that, oh, there was a game at Baylor and it was versus UT, so don't stop at the Temple Buckies. This is like how I used my brain, you know, on tour.
Yeah,
it's pretty wild.
It's the CB talk. Like, of course, like there's like so many great things that you can point back to the CB talk as far as just sounding really fucking cool. When you said Swift, I always remember my dad always saying, you know, Swift standard for what is it? Slow wagon and fast moving traffic or something like that.
It's hilarious.
So, yeah. You know, Simon, it's really, really great talking with you today.
Love it, man. It's been good. It's been keeping me warm. Final weather update. We're still at 12. No, man, it's been great, Thomas. It's been really good. It's definitely like a lifeline out into the world. Talking with you today, little, and I really appreciate, you know, you giving my record a spin and listening to it and all of that stuff. That means a lot. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely, man. It's been again, like the world needs music, and this has been playing around the house for the last couple of weeks. And yeah, next time you're in Lubbock, we'll have to sit down and do another one.
That would be fantastic. I I definitely plan on getting there as soon as possible. We'll see when that is.
All right. Thank you so much for listening. Be sure to check out Simon Flory and his new record, Haul These Blues Away. It's out this Friday. Go stop over at the Patreon, the merch store, all that kind of stuff. Check out the Neon Eon as well. Go stop by our presenting partners, Desert Door, The Blue Light Live, and Hot Damn Coffee. And yeah, I'll see y'all later this week for more episodes.